My name is Tyler Smith. I am a PDM specialist here at Hawk Ridge Systems. I've been here for about 2.5 years, and again, working mostly with PDM specifically. So there's really three things that we're going to be talking about today during this webinar. The first thing that we're going to talk about is managing file type specific data cards and workflows. So obviously this is a SOLIDWORKS product, so most people are aware that it's used a lot with CAD files, but that doesn't mean that it's limited to just working with CAD files in this PDM system. So we can have different types of data cards, which are basically customizable forms that allow us to store additional information about our files. And we can have those customized based upon file extension. So we can have things like weight and material, which might be important for our CAD files, but then we can have different forms for our non-CAD documents that don't have those type of fields and have fields that are more applicable to those data types. And then we also have our workflows. So our workflows are our approval processes, and we can build those out. So if we have ECO documents that need to go through a specific ECO approval process, we can set that up because that, again, might be different than what our CAD files will go through. So to take a look at what this looks like, I've opened up my Vault view, or my admin tool here rather, for PDM, and I have this vault that's just labeled PDM Vault, and underneath that you'll see that I have some different cards here. So these are the cards, these are the customizable forms that we can set up that will store additional information about our cards. And you'll see that I have an office card that's specific to my office documents. And let me just restart that here. And once I open that up, you'll see that I have a selection at the top, which allows you to select your document type if it's an engineering document, specification document, doc control. And basically this is going to have different items based upon the document type. So we'll have different fields here, again, that might be applicable to the different document types, even within our office documents. So we can set up these cards however we want them to be. But again, if we want those to be differentiated from maybe our part and drawing and assembly cards, we can do that based upon the file extension. But the other thing that you might note here under my cards node is I also have an ECO card that's also applicable to some of these same file extensions that the office card applies to. And what you can actually do is take one of your data cards and save it into a specific folder location. In this case, I have an ECO folder inside my vault that I've saved this ECO card into. So I have this ECO card that's more specific to my ECO document. So it has ECO number, what parts are affected, or what parts is the change order coming down on, what is the reason for the change, what other assemblies might be impacted. That kind of information. Again, you can set up those specific data cards for your different types at the extension level, but also in specific subfolders if you want to get even more granular like I have here. So we have those data cards. We also have our workflows. So if I scroll down here, you'll see that I have a few different workflows here. So I have my design workflow, that's for my CAD documents. I have my ECO workflow for my ECO files. I have a library parts workflow that I'm using for my template files. And then finally, my office documents workflow for my general office documents. And each of these have their own properties. So based upon the type of file, we can select which workflow it should go into. So if I look at the properties for each of these files, you'll see that I have a category set up so that if the file is categorized as an office document, it'll go into my office documents workflow. And if I take a look at what that category looks like, we'll see that anything that falls under these file extensions as long as it's not a template file, is going to go into this Office Documents category and thus into my Office Documents workflow. And I have a very similar setup with my other workflows as well. ECO files, any file names that start with ECO dash go into that. And then template files are going to get, again, if they're in templates folder, going to go into my library parts workflow. So to see what this looks like from the user perspective, because again, this is the admin tool. Only the admins will have access to this. This is where you change all the settings for your vault. So from the user perspective, what we'll see is our vault view here. Again, it's embedded inside Windows Explorer. And if I browse into where I have some documents stored, you'll see that I'll have, in this case, a specification document that I've created. And we'll see a data card that's specific for specifications. So I have specification number, project name and number, who created that file, who approved that file, and when. So all that information is built into that data card, and again, that's specific for this file type. And then because it has its own workflow, if I want to move that file through, or in this case, I'm going to create a new specification based upon a template that I have built into PDM. What I'll do is run that template. It's going to generate a new specification with its own number. And once I've created that file, I'll go ahead and check that in. It moves to draft, which in this case is the first state in my workflow. So files start off in draft, they go to review, and they go to approved. And just like any other workflow, we can have different permissions set up for each of these different workflow states. So these states, again, are just the steps that file will sit in as it's moving through the approval process. So our files start off in draft, they go to review, finally they move to approved. And as part of this workflow, we have the automation set up such that when that file gets approved, we have things like a PDF automatically being generated. So that was a pretty recent addition to PDM Professional, as they added in the ability to generate PDFs for Office documents. So I have that set up here to create a PDF when I approve a document. I also have my revision value being updated in the data card, and then I have the name of the approver and the date that it was approved being placed on the data card as well. So again, this is all pretty general automation that we can build in, but again, most of the time we're seeing this from the CAD workflow perspective. So this is, again, some things that we can add on to our Office document specific workflow. Now back in my vault view, I'm going to change the state on this file, I'll submit it for review. So now it's changed that state. And then finally, if I want to move that through to approved, I can do that. And it will move through to that final approved state in our workflow. So again, it's pretty similar to what you're already used to with CAD files, except that you can have these custom workflows that are specific to the other document types that you might want stored. So those are our specifications. The next thing that I want to show is our ECO documents. So unlike the specification document, our ECO document is actually going to be a Word document. So let me open up my Vault view again. Go into Engineering and ECOs, and I have an ECO Word document here. And just like I did with my specification, if I want to create a new ECO, I have an ECO template set up in my Vault. So I can generate that ECO file. And again, we'll see that ECO specific data card that's generated here. And if I check that file in, we'll see that it goes to ECO requested. So I have that ECO specific workflow. So this one's a little bit different, where I can assign the ECO to somebody. moves to ECO in process, and then finally moves to ECO completed. So again, with Pro, because you don't have a limitation on the number of workflows that you can use, you can really break this out and have specific approval processes for all the different document types that you might have stored inside your vault. So the next thing that I want to talk about is we just got done talking about those file specific or file type specific data cards and workflows. The next thing that I want to talk about is custom properties. So with SOLIDWORKS files, it's fairly simple. It's a fairly straightforward process. You have those custom properties built into SOLIDWORKS. There's a sub menu that you can access right directly in SOLIDWORKS with your custom property information, and that can be mapped over to the data card. What a lot of people don't realize is that there are actually custom properties inside Office documents as well. So in the case of our ECO or our specification files, what we can do is add in custom property links. So in this case, I'm going to open up my ECO that I just created. And I think this is going to pop up on my other screen, so I'll pull this over. And I actually have this ECO number here mapped into a field. And in this case, it doesn't automatically update. So what I'm going to do is right click on this field and go to Update Field. And it will fill out my ECO number based upon the ECO number driven by PDM in my data card here. The process of adding these custom properties is fairly simple. What you can do is go to a particular field here that doesn't have any custom property links in it. And then if I go to Insert, there's this Quick Parts drop down, and I can select this field option. Let me try one of these other boxes here instead. So I can create a field, and after I've created that field, I want to select Document Property. So Document Property opens up all the custom properties that I have already existing inside this document. So in this case, I don't have an effects custom property already created inside this document. So what I need to do is go and create that, and then I can tie my field here that I've added into a custom property that I've created. So to do that, I'll go ahead and cancel out of this for right now. I want to go to File, and there's this Properties drop down on the right hand side. And if I go to Advanced Properties, that allows me to access this Custom Property tab. So any of the custom properties that I've already created already exist here. And if I want to create a new one, I can type something in like effects like that, and then I might want to link it to some content there. And based upon the fields that I may have created, those will all show up as drop downs here, and I can add that link there. But once we've created that link from our custom properties to our data field that we've added into our document, now every time we move the file through, and if values are added to our data card, or maybe somebody manually edits a value in the document itself, it should map between what we see here and what actually shows up on the data card. And just like you might already be used to doing with CAD files, what we can do is go to our variables, and based upon the variable value that we want to map from the data card, so in this case, maybe it's impacts. We want to look at what impact is mapped to. So in this case, we have for our impacts variable, it's mapped to the custom property impacts. And then here are the applicable extensions, which should cover our macro-enabled Word document here. But basically, as long as we have this custom property mapping set up and our attribute name matches our custom property name, we should be able to map those values from our data card to the custom properties inside the Word document itself. Now, with specifications, or rather Excel documents in this case, things are a little bit more complex. So if I open up this specification that I've created, or maybe I want to create a new one. So I created this specification. Again, we have our specification number that was added there, the date that it was, or rather who created it, when they created it. So I'll go ahead and generate that. And then if I open this up, you'll see that it applies those values there. And each of these cells has a name on it. The way that you can add a name to a cell, so maybe for example, we don't currently have a revision value written on our specification document, even though there is a revision value that's written in the data card itself. So what we might want to do is go to the specific cell where we want to add in a revision value. So I'll add a label above it. And then here in the cell where I want to link the revision value, what I can do is go to formulas, and I'm going to define the name of this cell. So in this case, when I open up this define name, a lot of times it pulls information that's next to the cell. So in this case, it actually pulled the specification number, which obviously is not what I want. What I'm instead going to do is type in revision there. And now instead of giving it the generic B2 label like it would, we'll see that it gives it a actual name, revision in this case. Just like our other cells here have things like created by and specification number tied to the cell. So once we've named our cell, what we can do is go to File, Properties, Advanced Properties, just like we did in our Office document, or rather our Word document. And we have a custom tab here. And in this case, I want to add in a new custom property, which is revision, and I want to link it to content. So based upon the names that I've created inside my document already, I'll have the option to choose any of those that are available. So in this case, I just created a revision, so revision shows up there. So I'll select that and I'll hit add, and it will add that revision value to our list of custom properties. So now if we were to move that file through and it gets a revision value applied to that document similar to what we have here, we'll see that the revision value A will write over to our revision field there in the document itself. So again, that's the process of creating those custom references inside Excel and inside Office. So obviously there's a little bit of complexity to it because it's not just the generic, it's not quite as simple as it is in SOLIDWORKS, but it still can be done. One more thing that I will touch on while I'm in this is there's also, if I go to File and Properties, there is under Advanced Properties, you can go to, or rather, sorry, if I just go to Show Document Panel, there are some general description fields here, or things like who created the document, what's the title of the document, and some of these are already built in, like the author might be tied to your instance of Microsoft Office, but this information can also be pulled as well, and it's a very similar process in terms of mapping to what we saw with the custom properties as well. So if I were to go to author and look at my author variable, we'll see that there's this custom property here, but then we can also add in a new attribute, and instead of using custom property, we can use summary, and summary will allow me to pull this information. In this case, the block name is summary, but the attribute name would match whatever we see here, whether it's author, title, comments, things like that. So I could set up a mapping like that from those fields that might already be built into the document. And then again, I would need to make sure that I specify the correct file extension. So in this case, looking mostly at Word documents here, so that should be sufficient. And then again, that's allowing me to map in this information that might already exist into my data card inside PDM, so I have access to it. And the last thing that I want to look at here is my PDFs that were created as part of my workflow. Again, if I go back to the top level of my vault, I have some PDF folder here, and then we'll see that I have PDFs for my specifications that have been generated and placed here in this separate folder. And again, that's tied in with our workflows. That's one of those automated actions that we can set up as part of that workflow, as well as having those things like who created the file, who approved the file. All those fields can be written from that data card into the file itself. So again, that was custom properties. And the last thing that I want to talk about here is custom references. So inside our vault view, if I were to go into my engineering folder here, so I have a miter saw assembly that I have set up in my vault. And if I go to my bill of materials tab here, we're going to see a full bill of materials for this assembly as we would expect. But the difference between this bill of materials and the bill of materials that we have inside SOLIDWORKS, first off, anything that shows up in the feature tree inside SOLIDWORKS is going to show up under my bill of materials tab here. But we can also have custom references inside our bill of materials for this PDM specific bill of materials that we see on this bill of materials tab. So the nice thing here is if we have files that don't have 3D geometry, they're not tangible items, they can't be modeled as part of an assembly, we can still add them in as a custom reference. So in this case, if I wanted to add in a custom reference on this assembly, what I could do is check out the assembly that I want to add the reference onto. So in this case, I'm just going to check out this top level assembly. And again, I'll see everybody who has PDM and is logged into this vault view will see my name next to this file, showing that I have it checked out. Next, I want to go to the document that I want to attach as a reference. So in this case, I'll attach this ECO here. And to do that, what I can do is right-click and copy that ECO. Then I'll go back to my assembly here. And when I right-click on that assembly, instead of seeing a paste option, because again, I've selected a file here, what we'll see as paste as reference. And what this does is it adds one of those custom references to this assembly here. And then if this was something like a work instruction or assembly instruction, and maybe you want more than one copy added to that bill of materials, you can also specify the quantity here. So I'll hit OK. It shows that my version has been updated when I go to check this file in. So I'll go ahead and check that in. And after that file's checked in, if I scroll down here, we should see that we have our ECO document attached again as a custom reference inside this assembly. So if you open up this assembly in SOLIDWORKS, this information is not going to be stored here. So we need a way to get this bill of materials information, this custom bill of materials, out of the PDM system. And to do that, right in this tab here, there's actually an export or open as CSV file, which will allow me to open up this file as an Excel document where it has broken out the different layers based upon here's one subassembly and all the parts underneath it. Here's another one. But it also has those custom references added in as well. So that's a way that we can get that bill of materials out of this system if they do have those type of custom references, because again, those aren't going to be seen inside SOLIDWORKS itself because those are custom references. So now if we were to go through and make the changes that were requested in the ECO, and this file gets approved again, now we need to remove this ECO. We need a way to do that as well. So just like we did with when we were adding the custom reference, we'll need to check out this file, because again, we're changing the information about this file. And once we've checked out that file, in the Contains and the Where Used tab, there is a Custom References option here. So if I select that, it'll show any custom references that exist underneath that file. And if we want to remove the reference or change the quantity, we can do that here. So in this case, I'm going to remove this reference. So I'll deselect the checkbox next to that file and hit OK. And now when I check that file back in, again, we're going to have a new version that's created because we've changed the information about this file. But it removes that ECO reference. If I were to go back to the previous version, we would still see that ECO document attached there, but not in the most recent one. And then also if I go back to the ECO itself, we should see that it's referenced in version 3 of this assembly, even though there's also a later version that exists. So again, we can really add on any types of references. If there's something inside PDM, we can add that as a custom reference on, into something else. So that was an ECO. We could also do it for if we had an image. So I have an image of this miter saw assembly that I might want to attach here. So I can take that. And again, it's the same process. It's very simple. You just have to make sure to check out the item that you're attaching the image to. And then again, it's paste as reference. And maybe we want a couple copies of this attached. And then we check that in. And again, that will be updated with those custom references, which in this case is that image there with the number or the quantity of items for those non-CAD items. So again, we went over 3 things here. We talked about our file specific or our file type specific data cards and workflows. So we can have data cards that are specific to our file extensions. We can also have even more granular data cards where we have something like the ECO data card that we saw here that's saved inside of a ECO subfolder, and that applies to all of the ECO files in that folder. And then we can also have workflows that are specific to our different document types. So if we have a different ECO approval process or our specifications have to go through a different process, we can create those workflows and then route our files based upon file extension or folder location into our different workflows. We also talked about custom properties. So using custom properties in non-CAD files. So again, with our Office documents, we had to create our custom property and then map a field to that custom property that we created. In our Excel documents, we labeled or named one of our cells and then created a custom property that was linked to that cell. And then finally, we talked about custom references. So adding in those references that are not they don't have 3D geometry, but still need to be added in as part of our bill of materials. And again, because it's PDM specific, if you try to export the bill of materials via SOLIDWORKS, it's not going to include those custom references. So make sure that when you add those custom references, that you're exporting the bill of materials directly from PDM to ensure that those references are contained in that bill of materials. So that's it for the webinar today. If you have any other questions at this point, feel free to type them in the chat box and I can address them. here, and I'll make sure to repeat the question if you send me a question privately or something like that. I can also talk about those offline as well. So again, that's thank you for attending this webinar. I hope it was helpful. If you do have any additional questions for me specifically, I'll type my email here in the chat box. And then if you do have other questions that you think of later on, you can feel free to email me. So there's my email if anybody does have questions about anything we've gone over today, or really anything PDM specific. Because like I said, I work mostly with PDM, doing implementations and trainings and things like that. So if you do have any questions about anything that we saw today or anything PDM related, feel free to email me at that email address.